all we say to America is be true to what you said on paper. If I lived in China or even Russia or any totalitarian country, maybe I could understand some of these illegal injunctions. Maybe I could understand the denial of certain basic First Amendment privileges because they haven't committed themselves to that over there. But somewhere I read of the freedom of assembly. Somewhere I read of the freedom of speech. Somewhere I read of the freedom of press. Somewhere I read that the greatness of America is the right to protest far right.
It's about 1 in the morning, and we're headed to Missouri to support Dr. Ron Paul, help people learn about his campaign and promote freedom. Got about a 7-hour road trip ahead of us. Who else has volunteers in their campaign that would do this? You know, the Ron Paul supporters are passionate, they love freedom. Everything they do is voluntary, and they do it because they love America and they love the principles we were founded on. So, like Paul Revere, we don't have horses, but we have a little sedan we're riding in. It's about 6 in the morning. We've been up all night driving to meet Ron Paul. We just saw the arch, and we're about 2 hours away. And we're on our way to help carry on the revolution. We finally made it after driving all night from Tennessee. We're in the University of Missouri, found where we need to be. We're exhausted, but I think the excitement and just the chance to participate in this revolution will definitely carry us on into the next couple hours, and a chance to record Dr. Paul and meet with fellow revolutionaries. Tell us what's going on today.
Ron Paul's coming to speak today, and it's a pleasure to have him in our community here at the University of Missouri, and we're looking forward to hear what he has to say.
How did you find out about Dr. Ron Paul?
I guess back in 2007, whenever he first ran, well, I guess not first ran for office since I've been a voter, I just started listening to him. I said, you know, he sounds different than everybody else, and whatever everybody else is saying just doesn't make sense.
I think the local reaction is really good. They've pre-enrolled over 400, 500 people coming, just pre-enrollment, and it's right here on campus, and a lot of kids are interested in seeing what's going on.
Okay.
Take part in the process, and our caucuses are Saturday.
What brings you guys out to the university today?
We just wanted to support Ron Paul today because he's coming here to speak. We just, you know, we feel strongly about what he stands for, and we just wanted to come support him.
As a college student, why is Dr. Paul important to you?
Because right now, the way the economy is, we don't know when we graduate if we're going to have jobs or what kind of future we're going to have, and we believe that Ron Paul can turn everything around and bring our economy back.
When I was 15, I made $1.35 an hour. That was 4 quarters and a dime. Today, that's worth $30. What's happened to America in a few short years? Well, you take a look at it. Can't you figure it out, America? We're in trouble. And if we don't find our conservative past, the future thrift is by being conservative with your money and careful with your money. Not like this government who throws vast amounts of money away and has debased the country. I'm very disappointed with politics as they've been in the past. You know, the whole notion of allowing a president to go to China and open it up with the open door policy of Clinton, that's horrible. That's destroyed America. Hillary Clinton was a voting member on the board in Bentonville, Arkansas at the same time Bill Clinton went to China and opened it up. Now look at us. We're a mess. Right. What's going to happen now with the politics, with what's happening in the country? It looks to me like it's pretty much sour grapes. Right. You know, I've got children. They can't find jobs. What's going to happen to us?
It was back in 2008 when the financial crisis happened. I was looking through the internet seeing like what was an explanation for it. And there were a lot of people saying how it happened, but the only people who actually predicted it happening all pointed to either supported or also pointed to statements made by Dr. Ron Paul, who predicted the 2008 event.
I'm honestly scared for the future if we can't get rid of our debt now. We're inheriting all that as like the youth of this generation. Government subsidies in college loans are just killing us. The cost of tuition is going up every year. Things like that really hit home for me.
I think people have to realize there's the pre-1936 Constitution, the post-1936 Constitution, but and Obama follows the post-1936 Constitution.
I've given some talks from time to time and spoken to groups about what it is we're trying to accomplish with Ron Paul, and we all love Ron Paul, but you know, it's not Ron Paul the person we're working for. It's the ideas he represents, and the ideas he represents are those as delineated in the Constitution. It's one of limited, enumerated powers granted to the government, and no more, and they're there to protect us, not to control us. The Declaration of Independence is the philosophical statement of our right to exist, and exist as people. Now, they use the laws of nature and nature's God, which are two different things, so it's depending on your worldview, what you're going to use to establish that as your premise. But that's the philosophical statement. It was beautifully printed, beautifully written, and awesome. The Constitution is the practical implementation of it. I've been doing research for the last year and a half on a proposed book about this. What Happened is my working title, but the Constitution should be the concrete implementation of what the Declaration of Independence says.
If our government is a car, it's designed to run with certain checks and balances that are similar to like a wheel or an axle or a steering wheel. And the way that people are applying public policy now, they're trying to undo some of these checks and balances. But they're not realizing that the car can't run without an axle or a steering wheel or wheel. I mean, if you're going to just radically, fundamentally change the way that the system's checks and balances work, then there either needs to be a new system but you can't just, you can't compromise between something that works and something else that works to where in the middle the thing doesn't work. And I think that's what, in a great sense, we've done with our republic. And locally, I think a lot more of the conservative activists who kind of fell for the Bush stuff are starting to fundamentally agree with us on the concept that the Constitution does need to be followed. I don't think they interpret the Constitution the same way we do, but I think they're starting to understand why you have the rule of law versus the rule of men. Because the rule of men is totally corruptible. Any man is going to, or woman, obviously gender neutral, is going to want to use their power to benefit themselves. And we've seen that time and time again. These guys get into these shady deals because they want to have the ability to go out and give these speeches to, maybe they get a seat on the board at a corporation after they've done them some favors while they were in office. Once they're out of office, we all know these things happen. We see it happen. We see people giving deals out to family members and friends of government officials. So, this is the direction it goes when you have rule by men. When you have the rule of law, where those who run the government are bound by law and they're limited by law and they can only do certain things and they're compelled to do specific things only, then you can have good governance. But you can't, we don't have a system, a democratic system anymore. It's like, okay, I'll give you a great example of where our Republican governance has gone off the rails is you look at the FDA, the regulatory authorities. Most people are like, we need regulations. And to an extent, we do need rules of the road in the economy so that people know what fraudulent behavior is and that kind of thing. But the problem is that the way this is done is you have laws that are created by the legislature, which should be specific. The laws are then implemented by the executive branch, and then the consequence of the law is interpreted by the judicial. So if the legislative branch were to pass a law about, let's say, regulating banks, and then the president's executive branch were to implement the law and they were to find someone who's behaving badly, they could go to court and have a trial. That would make sense. The way it happens now is they give sweeping authority to a regulatory branch, such as the SEC. They just give them the ability to write thousands and thousands of laws on the subject. And those people are not elected. They're never going to be elected. They're appointed by the president. So basically just gives the president the ability to write laws in that whole category. And almost every category of regulation works that way now, where we have no democracy. So, I mean, what the Democratic Party supports with regulations right now is pretty much the Mussolini fascism model. It's where you have a gatekeeper who tells you who wins and loses in the industry, who gets to write the laws such that the new businesses can't come up and compete. So I think there's been a deep understanding amongst older conservative activists locally that we do need our rule of law back, and that the rule of men it doesn't work. It's too corruptible. It leaves too much power. I don't trust myself with the power those people get in Washington, D.C.
The Constitution is a powerful, powerful document. The Bill of Rights is my favorite. And yeah, I study it. I live by it. That's why it's so frustrating seeing these different bills pass and seeing Congress pass them without even, like, what is it? You're taking away our rights. These are our rights. How the hell are you taking them away? I didn't know you could do this. Aren't we supposed to have checks and balances? How's the government signing this executive order? How are they pushing this through? How's the Supreme Court ruling this? Like, it's not. Where's our balance of powers? That's why it was set up that way. But, there's nobody defending us anymore. We're just these peons that they can stomp and piss on. And, it's a sad thing, but we gotta bring ourselves back. I say go back to the basics. Same thing in fighting. All the fancy stuff that you learn over the years, and sometimes guys just get too confident, they'll lose the basics. And I always say, if I see a fighter doing that, I say, hey, let's go back to the basics. Chin down, throw your jab straight, feint, cross. I mean, just basic stuff. You don't have to do the spinning back kick or, stop throwing so many high kicks, throw your leg kick, Or, don't be going for these crazy submissions on the ground. Go back to the basics, pass the guard, hold position. You probably don't know what that means, but it's basic stuff in fighting. And same thing, go back to the basics. The Constitution, you know what jacks me up, it ticks me off, people say, oh, the Constitution's outdated. Like, really? So our rights are outdated? We shouldn't have the right to free speech? We should just allow them to bust into our houses without a search warrant? We should just say, oh, we don't need a fair trial or a fast trial. You can just detain us indefinitely. No problem. Whenever you get around to it, government, you're good and great. Do whatever you want to do. We have no meaning. Our life has no meaning. Is that what we should go back to? No. The Constitution's powerful. It's not outdated. It's simple. Now, what's stupid is, 1,000-page bills. The health care bill, I don't know how big that bill was. That's what's stupid to me. Should we go? Is that a more updated document of how we should do things? No. The Bill of Rights. These are our rights. This is what it is. You can't take these away from us. So no, I don't think our Constitution is outdated. I think it's a powerful, powerful document, and I think people should read the Constitution and realize what it says and realize their rights. And I tell you something else. This is something that I would talk to my friend about. And he's African American, has his PhD, went to Howard University. I was talking to him because I really think that the African American community is the one that's stomped on the most. And I think if they realize that they have constitutional rights and they were able to rise up and fight back against the police peacefully, knowing that, hey, you know what? If a cop pulls you over, he can't search your car without a search warrant, unless he has probable cause, which, if you're not doing anything illegal, don't let him search your car. He can't pull over to you while you're walking on the street, which hasn't happened to you or I. I've never been walking on the street and had a cop pull me over. One of the guys I work with has his master's here, African-American guy, And he said he's been pulled over, he's counted it 38 times walking down the street. They stop and say, hey, what are you doing around? Like, hey, we want to search. And he says no. He's smart enough to say no. You can't search me. But why? They don't do that to us. The average African American, they pull up in the cop car next to them. They're scared of the police. They're like, hey, we got to search you. And the police are like, and the guy's like, okay, yeah, search me. Go ahead. You're giving away your rights. So I really think that we should empower that community too, because they need to realize that they are, they have the same constitutional rights as I do, because there's no difference. There's a skin, they're human beings. They have these rights. Now, I think that we really need to let them know that. They're all up on Obama right now, quite frankly, because he's African American. Generally, African Americans are for Obama because he's African American. It is what it is. But they need to realize that he's been chipping away their rights too. You know, he's not fighting for the average African American out there. He's still pushing the war on drugs. He ran on that platform in California that he wasn't going to send the DEA in. And what did he do? They go and raid these medical marijuana places. They, raise havoc. The DEA just arrested this kid, put him in a cell for 5 days. It wasn't a cell. It was a room. It didn't have a bathroom or a toilet or food. They forgot about him. 24 years old for marijuana. They're going to release him. They forgot about him. Kid almost died. He was in ICU for 2 days when they finally found him. Tried to kill himself when delirious, was drinking his own urine. That's the National Defense Authorization Act, ladies and gentlemen, in full force. Now, it wasn't that act that they used, but they can do that. That's legal right there under the National Defense Authorization Act. They can now do that. This thing the DA did was an accident, they said. But technically, if the president gave that order, sure, go ahead and do it. They say, well, that's torture, being in that room without a restroom. Sure, that is, but who would know? You're being detained indefinitely and sent to a secret prison. Who would know? Who's monitoring this? And so the people, they're going to have to wake up right now. And they're going to wake up eventually. If not, we could wake up one day and this whole thing, this whole facade that we see right now as America is going to be gone.
We have a constitution that already guarantees every American citizen equal rights under the law. We don't need special laws that promote the rights of blacks over another group. Let's deal with the Jim Crow laws, okay? Let's just get rid of those. Let's not create new regulations, because we already have a constitution that guarantees the American Negro the same rights as whites. The first thing that happened with civil rights, desegregation, we had what we call black flight. We had an area of town in Atlanta, the Auburn Avenue area, that was very prosperous in terms of black business, but blacks were not ready for desegregation when it came along, because soon as desegregation came, because of social conditioning, black folk had this mindset that if it's not owned by a white man, if a white man didn't sell it, didn't make it, then it's not as good as what the white man has got. So a lot of black businesses started to flounder and fail because blacks wanted to go where the whites were. I'm not saying there's nothing wrong with wanting to shop in the white stores, but because of the psychological aspect behind the reasoning, what it ultimately led to was a decimation of many black neighborhoods. And that's sad on the surface, because I know that is not what Dr. Martin Luther King wanted. And the last example I'll give is why I say Martin Luther King wasn't looking for new laws to be made. Martin Luther King was looking for equal opportunity, which is what Ron Paul promotes: equal opportunity for everybody, freedom for every American. Dr. Martin Luther King wanted freedom He wanted black folks to share in the same freedoms that the Constitution talked about. That's why he did what he did, because he knew he had the backing of the Constitution.
There's almost so many severe threats to our liberties right now. Almost every single one of the Bill of Rights is under such a direct, immediate, purposeful threat that it's hard to really just single out only one thing. I mean, you have the NDAA where they've taken away your right to a fair trial, where you can be hauled off into Guantanamo Bay if you're allegedly a terrorist, according to one of the 800,000 or so people who have special federal, law enforcement clearances. People with special secret security clearances. There's at least 800,000 employees of the DOD who probably could, if it came down to it, accuse someone of being a terrorist, and nobody would double check. These things are horrendously frightening and unbelievable that they're happening in America.
Philosophy drives history, and the history then becomes where we are. So you want to go back and look at the philosophy that's driving us. And the American people today are still enjoying the remnants of the founding of our country. The founding of the country, the Constitution doesn't put any limits on anybody's behavior. First of all, we have to ask, what is the purpose of government? The purpose of government is the protection of individual rights. Individual rights include force and fraud. And that's what the Constitution eloquently wrote about. Today they eschew that and they attack it. And they attack it because it doesn't give them their progressive outcomes they want.
Democracy is where 51% of the people get to destroy the rights and take away the property of the other 49%. And, the founders hated democracy. That's why they set up a constitutional republic. But we're not a republic anymore. And it's why Ben Franklin, when he walked out of the Constitutional Convention and Mrs. Powell walked up to him and said, what have you given us, Dr. Franklin? He said, a republic, if you can keep it. It's one of the most famous quotes there is.
The ideas in the Constitution are greater than the Constitution itself. It's just that if you look at all the documents about human freedom, especially documents upon which a nation's government has been founded, I would argue, at least from my research, that the Constitution of the United States of America is the top of the pile as a shining example of a document upon which a nation was founded that actually had some success in restraining the government from violating the rights of the people.
If I talk to people about what's going on, if I say, okay, this is going on, the first time they may not listen to me, second time, third time, eventually when the government starts chopping away our rights, one of the things is going to touch a nerve with somebody. And it's when it touches that nerve with somebody that you can start converting them into understanding, into the libertarian philosophy pretty much, the conservative type idea of small government. This is why you feel this way. You feel like they're coming in on your rights. Well, check this out. This is our Bill of Rights. You have all these other rights. They're also taking away this one from you. And I know you didn't really care about them taking away this one, but this person over here really cares. Shouldn't we care about protecting their rights too? Especially a right that they care about? And so I think that's when it starts converting people. When you start, if they're let's say they're mad about free speech, but they're not mad about the right to a fast trial, speedy trial. Or they're concerned about the government coming in and making new gun laws, but they're not concerned about the government coming in and searching our houses. And I think that if you look at that, the one that they're angry about, if you show them that and say, okay, you're angry about this, let's look at all these other things that are out there and all these other people that are affected by them taking away this right, I think that's when you really bring the people together and realize how important all of our rights are and how we can't, if we let the government trample on one, we can't, when do they stop? Why is it, why is it okay for them to take away our Fourth Amendment? We don't have a Fourth Amendment anymore. We don't have it. The Patriot Act took it away. Why is that okay? I mean, it's not okay. I mean, I guess if they took away our Second Amendment rights, That's probably what the country would be most upset about, but all rights are as important as the other rights. And we can't say that we support, that we don't want them to take away our First Amendment right, but we're okay with them taking away our Fourth Amendment right, or that we don't want them to take away our Second Amendment right, but we're okay with them taking away our Fifth Amendment right. And when does it stop? So that's the questions that we have to ask ourselves every single time.
I'm optimistic enough to believe that we can bring people together on the big issue of liberty. Why individuals who call themselves liberals, and why the issue of liberty as understood by conservatives, why we shouldn't come together. Whether it's audit the Fed, hopefully we can persuade more about the wars, the fact that the other candidates are now saying, hey, you know, maybe it is a good idea we come home from Afghanistan. So there is a shift. We should be able to come together. We should be able to come together with deficits. I can't imagine those who like big government at home should endorse deficit when it leads to this crisis. But we should be able to come together not because of our lifestyles, not because of how we would use our liberty, not because how we would spend our money, but because we want our freedom. People should come together because we want to be free individuals. In a partial way, we still have remnants of that belief. We usually don't go out challenging people about their religious beliefs. Every once in a while, I think it's crept into this campaign a theocratic approach to politics, which I do not like. But we should be able to bring people together because we want you to make your choices on how you spend your money. But how you spend your money should be equivalent to how you spend your life, what your social values are. You know, this whole idea and the amount of time we've been spending, you know, the world's coming apart. The debt is exploding. The wars are going on. The financial crisis on our doorstep. And we're fighting over who's going to pay for the birth control pills. You know, it's beyond belief, you know, that becomes the biggest issue. Liberty has to become the issue. And a lot of people are frightened. They're fearful of liberty because individuals might practice a lifestyle they don't like and they will resent it. Well, that is one requirement in a free society. You have to become a little more tolerant than some people are. You need to tolerate other people. But if you're still not convinced, toleration doesn't mean endorsement. I tolerate to the best of my ability. I have personal feelings about what people should do. I have a right to take care of my own life and maybe advise my children and raise my children, but we don't have a right to try to tell other people. So you do become tolerant. But other people, if they're doing things you don't like, they don't have a right to force it on you. And that's what government's about. Government is power. And they want to force economic issues on us and economic redistribution, and they want to force lifestyles on us. They want to force the definition of marriage on us. They're always wanting to tell us what to do. There's a lot of busybody in Washington who like running a nanny state. I want to repeal the nanny state. We had the best trial of freedom in the history of the world. We were the freest and the most prosperous. Now we are not so free. The experiment is at crossroads. A lot of people say this is the election that will determine it. Now I don't think November is going to determine it. It'll have a significance. If you keep voting for warmongers, yes, this is going to be very negative. But we are at a crossroads. We don't know when the final decision has to be made, but there will be one. We'll have to decide which way we're going, toward tyranny or toward liberty. Those who oppose us claim that we want to go backwards, backwards to the old days. But freedom is so young, there aren't very many old days, 100 years or 200 years. What about 6,000 years of history? Those who promote big government for whatever reason are tyrants, and they want to go back to the tyranny of the ages. We want something new and wonderful, freedom for the individual.
We always joke around about who we vote for, and we're going to vote for the less of two evils, and it's like, I don't want to do that anymore. I want to vote for somebody who's passionate about this country and who I can be passionate about, and that's been a huge difference.
Just the pride of going to the, going and voting, casting your vote for Ron Paul, and being able to be proud of that and not, oh, he was the, the lesser of two evils, or, you know, just being able to go and vote and be proud of that.
Be excited.
Yeah, and not just
knowing that you're standing up for what so many people have fought and died for from the beginning of our nation, and it's you kind of feel more patriotic. I mean, as much as I was growing up in a military family, which, you know, I felt very patriotic, you know, having my parents serve and my brother, and, you know, and now it's like I'm standing up for the Constitution and those who have fought and died for it. And that really makes you feel so proud of the country and what it's meant to be.
It should be pretty clear that you can't unanimously trust any source all the time. And I would just encourage them to look a lot further at the issues. Look at the things that we're saying about the bills. Don't just read the names of the bills. Don't just trust because a politician says something during the campaign that they're going to do it during the rest of the time. In fact, ignore anything they say on the campaign trail. Only look at their votes. Only look at how they're receiving their money, because this is what really matters.
To research the voting record of anybody you're voting for, I think is absolutely necessary. If you don't take the time to educate yourself, then you could potentially put a person in office that has no business of being there.
Santorum's people all went to Romney. Gingrich's people all went to Romney because we have to unify the party. But that's not what it's about anymore. This is about real issues. This isn't about whether you have an R or a D in front of your name, because it's the same thing.
Sometimes when you support someone, you can project your own positive feelings and attributes onto that person. If you support Obama and you were against the Iraq War, for instance, you're ready to give him all sorts of credit for pulling the troops out, even though he didn't pull them out a day earlier than George Bush had signed an agreement where they had to be out. I mean, the agreement signed with Iraq said you had to be out by the end of 2011. Well, Obama gets the troops out of Iraq. Some people are like, yeah, he did that. Well, okay. Or with the TSA, I think people who are Obama supporters are more likely to come to the conclusion that these measures are really being done for our safety and they are the best measures that could happen. He just has to do that. He has no other choice. Whereas if it was Bush that was president, they would be saying quite the opposite. And the same thing goes for Republicans. They'll give their preferred candidate the benefit of the doubt.
I love everything that the grassroots group is doing here in Nashville for Ron Paul. It so excites me to see a candidate that the media has largely ignored with so much support. I'm out here standing for something I believe in. I'm voting for my conscience.
People used to define themselves as Barry Goldwater conservatives, but they don't have to do that anymore. In fact, they don't. Now people are saying, I'm a Ron Paul Republican. And that'll still be happening 50 years from now. In fact, Ron Paul is going to be in the history books hundreds of years from now. He has started such a revolution.
In the last presidential election, a friend of mine kind of clued me in on what Ron Paul was all about. I saw bumper stickers everywhere, and I thought, who is this Ron Paul guy? What is he about? A friend of mine who was already clued in explained it all for me, and Ron Paul cured my political apathy, and I've been a huge supporter ever since.
I know we're all so busy in our routines and schedules, but I swear if you got online, you Googled NDAA, you might be surprised at what's really happening in this country. This country is built on liberty and freedom and choice.
The similarities of Romney and Obama are the same as the similarities of all the other politicians in Congress, except for Ron Paul, and maybe a few others I am not aware of, and the Senate, except for possibly Rand Paul. But all of them, Republicans and Democrats, are all progressives in that they believe in the power of the Volk, of the group, of collectivism, of the absence of liberty. They think you should do what they tell you to do because they know what they're doing. And the Republicans are just like Democrat light. That's all there's no difference in them. Ron Paul is advocating a return to strong thinking, freedom thinking. In a sense, it's selfish thinking, but it's not selfish in that I want what you have. It's just selfish, I want what's mine. I earned it. So the progressives and Romney and Obama are all the same. They don't care. They don't mind forcing you to do what they tell you to do.
Our government is based on the idea that it's government of the people. Our president's supposed to be just one of us, and the president shouldn't have a radius under which it suspends everyone else's rights, because that defies the sense that our president's just another one of us, you know, that shouldn't have any special power or authority that we don't have.
If you're a Gingrich supporter, you're a Romney supporter. If you're a Santorum supporter and you really believe in him, you're a Romney supporter. I mean, what does Romney really bring to the table? Let's look at it. He brought us Romney Care, or he brought Massachusetts Romney Care. The individual mandate was in Romney Care originally, you know, like that's the same thing. Then you got Obamacare, same thing. Obamacare is a model off Romney Care. How's he going to beat Obama on that? Was he going, oh, well, it was a state issue. I guess that's probably going to be his way around it. I'm just guessing. I don't know how he's going to argue it. He was, from the conservative standpoint, he was pro-choice originally, and then he's now pro-life. And he spoke openly about it in the past. He changed his mind. Maybe he changed his mind. He supported TARP. That's not a conservative idea. I mean, all the people that, and this is what the people should also do. They should go back, and anyone, just make this the status quo of what we're doing now. If anyone voted for TARP, out.
If Romney ends up getting the Republican nomination, I think we got the two biggest liars ever in the history of the United States presidency, and it's surely in my lifetime. I think that it'll just be horrible, the amount of lies that'll be going back and the non-issues that'll be chased versus the opportunity we have with Ron Paul to have the issues. And it would be a sad day if that's what we end up, is we got those two guys as our two choices, and both of them have lied and changed sides, whichever way the winds blow. And you know, when you got this guy who's not the prettiest, you know, good-looking, smooth-talking politician that's telling you the truth about the issues, that's a big deal to me, and I've tried to let everybody know that I could. And you know, of course, a lot of people think I'm nuts, but you know, I don't care.
The things that I find most shocking about the Obama presidency, when he went in, he said, "I'm going to go and work as a bipartisan president." But this is on record. He said after he won, okay, I won. We're going to do this our way. That was his message, loud and clear to the GOP. We won. We're doing it our way. He had the majority in both the House and the Senate. Literally and legally, they could have done whatever it was they wanted to do through the legislative process because they had the votes. But Obama was stopped in a number of areas, and most painfully with the health care. The only way he was able to get it passed was by threatening people in his own party that he would not support them if they didn't help him get that bill passed. That was shocking to me. Now, you got a majority in both houses, but it took you that long to get it passed when you had the majority, so you had to resort to threatening your own party members. You had members in your own party coming out and speaking against some of the issues that they had with this bill. That was shocking, but most Americans can't see that. So with that, Obama then resorted to a new trend. Stuff I want to get done, let me just start doing it through executive orders. And that is the trend that Obama has been on since the fiasco with the health care. I can't make it happen legislatively. I'm going to make it happen through executive orders. And the other big one for me was, after winning the Nobel Peace Prize for accomplishing absolutely not a damned thing, he sent bombs over to Libya. We got NDAA, signed on New Year's Eve when Americans were in a drunken stupor, not understanding that it violates Posse Comitatus of 1878 that prohibits the U.S. military from being able to execute any police powers on American citizens on American soil. But folk don't see that. They don't want to hear that. The media is not talking about that. And Obama said he wouldn't sign it. Obama told a lot of lies before getting elected that he didn't stick to, but most folk they don't see it. For instance, I'm going to end the war in Iraq. Elect me, I will bring our troops home. He got right in and adopted the same timeline that Bush had. I signed Don't Ask, Don't Tell. Now he's come out with I support gay marriage. And folk can't even see it. So when he get in, Obama wanted to have a whole list of items on his resume while at the same time doing his dirty work through executive orders that most Americans won't even pick up and read, don't even care what it's about. So that is what is shocking to me. The blatant, outrageous, and overt deception that this man has engaged in, the fact that we can't even recognize that he doesn't have the complete and total support of his own party members, okay? The fact that this man has tried to force down our throats a product, Obama healthcare, that we will have to have, the first time in U.S. history that our government will be able to force us to buy a commercial product that we don't want. That on the surface is completely un-American and unconstitutional.
So he wasn't going to back out just because it got hard, just because it didn't poll well. That's just never been who he is, and it's certainly not how he will ever govern this country.
My response to people who say that they think it's okay to compromise the Constitution a little bit is if you believe that, why are you still here in this country? If you don't want to go by the Constitution, it's easy. It's a simple response. Just move out. I encourage you to. If you want socialism and not a republic form of government, move away. There's a lot of socialist countries out there that you'd be happy in. If you want communism, then move to a communist country. They're there. They're out there. If you want fascism, totalitarianism, there's many dictators in the world. If that's the system you like, go there. But we want a republic, and that is what we stand for, and that's what we're going to fight for. We love our republic. We love our Constitution. We love our liberty. That's what America was founded on, and that's what we're going to stand behind.
People want to criticize me for throwing away my vote, but I mean, voting for Romney or Obama, it's just going to be 4 more years of the same warmongering and debt that we've seen for the past 4 years, for the past
wastes. And yeah, that's the one thing that I guess really helped me was not just Romney and Obama, but Obama and Bush even. You know, everybody criticized Bush about, you know, the Patriot Act and going over to war and this, that, and the other. And they had this hope in Obama that was going to go away. And he's done the same thing. Yeah, we got out of Iraq, but now we're in Afghanistan and we're bombing, you know, using drones and bombing innocent people. And, you know, we've gone even further in debt and there's less hope for, you know, our future. And you know, Romney's not going to be any better. It's the same thing. Once again, it's the status quo. It's the same message, just different party.
I challenge you, learn what the Constitution is all about and how and what the purpose of our government is. Because you can't begin to understand what's going on if you don't even know what it is you're dealing with. It's just like with the Bible. It teaches us, my people perish for a lack of knowledge. Well, if we don't have an understanding of what the Constitution is all about, then we can't see what's wrong with all of the policies that are being passed by our government today. I would also challenge you to truly understand the different forms of government. What is socialism? What is fascism? What is communism? What is the difference between a democracy and a republic? We get some of those basic understandings, we can then begin to see how does the American governmental system line up or stack up to those various forms of government that I just mentioned.
As much as I love Ron Paul, I think one of the fallacies that I caught on to very early was the slander that the Ron Paul movement is a cult of personality. And I think that's a big misgiving, and it's really not a correct understanding of what's going on. There is a liberty movement happening in America right now. There are people who are drawing lines in the sand and saying the government cannot cross this line. I have rights that the government cannot infringe upon. And if they perpetrate violence, if the government itself perpetrates violence against me, then, even Thomas Paine, and I'm paraphrasing, but, talked about how a patriot must be prepared to protect his country and the people of his country from his own government. And that's kind of where I am now, in the paradigm that I see nowadays is not the paradigm that I grew up with, left versus right, Republican versus Democrat. I don't see it that way anymore. I very much now see it as tyranny versus liberty, the government versus individual freedoms. And so I got involved, and I heard that that Veterans for Ron Paul was going to be staging a march on the White House on February 20th of 2012, which was President's Day in D.C., that we were going to be marching from the Washington Monument to the White House and turning our backs in formation on the present Obama administration. And we were going to salute and hold a salute for a folded American flag, 1 second for every active duty soldier who had committed suicide under the Obama regime. And that's what we did. I believe the salute lasted somewhere around 8 minutes. We also observed another 20 minutes roughly of silence for the other lives that have been lost in the war on terror. And it was inspiring to me. And I didn't really know what to expect when I went to the March on the White House. I knew there were going to be veterans coming from all over the United States, and there were even people who had come there from Canada that I met. But there were patriotic veterans from all over the country, and I didn't know what to expect with that kind of a crowd showing up for an activist, political rally. And I was pleasantly surprised that you could basically stop just about any individual in that crowd, and they had a pretty decent grasp on the issues, and were pretty passionate and had a pretty good understanding of the fact that the government has grown out of control. We've reached a boiling point where you can no longer quantify things in regards to Republican versus Democrat necessarily, but must be put in much more of a framework of the federal government has just gotten too big and too powerful and too invasive and too intrusive and too interventionist into every part of our lives. And we have to make a stand now. Ron Paul is just the standard bearer, but there's a bigger movement going on. At this point in time, it does look like Mitt Romney has clinched the nomination of the Republican Party for president, and I will say there is no way on God's green earth that I am ever going to vote for Barack Obama or Mitt Romney for President of the United States. Neither one of them are competent to be Commander-in-Chief. Barack Obama has already proven that he is a failed leader. And it's created a vacuum of leadership in Washington where I think the grassroots Ron Paul movement all over this country is stepping up and filling that void. And I think people in the Ron Paul and the Liberty movement, the Ron Paul campaign and in the Liberty movement in general, maybe sometimes don't even realize just how much potential that we have. And I cannot stomach a Mitt Romney presidency. The guy protested in favor of the draft during the Vietnam War, but himself got waivers so that he wouldn't have to go. The chicken hawk warmongering piece of was happy to send other people to Vietnam to die, and to actually get out in the streets with a sign and protest and say very loud and clear that he was more than happy to send other people by force of a gun, to combat and force them into that situation, but he himself got waivers so that he wouldn't have to go. He is not qualified to be Commander-in-Chief of the United States military, and he would be an insufferable president, just as much as Barack Obama. It is not time for us to settle for these mediocre status quo professional politicians such as we've had in the past. It's one of the reasons I think Ron Paul's message is so powerful, because it's not about a man, it's not about a personality, it's about a message. It's about an idea that's time has come.
What we're about, we want to turn the tide. And it's not gonna work if we keep going along with the establishment where, oh, somebody's the GOP nominee, but they stand for the same exact things that Obama stands for. There's nothing different if you look at their track record.
Ron Paul's message is slowly sinking in. I'm also shocked at ways in which Ron Paul's message is not sinking in, although I noticed we had 9% in Tennessee this year, and that's up from 4 years ago, and I think the next time around it could be 15 or 16 or even 20. So slowly but surely we're going to win this. We're going to win because history's on our side. I think the best thing that could happen is for Obama to win other than against Ron Paul, and because that will catalyze more people to jump on the bandwagon. If we get a Republican in like Romney this time, what's going to happen is people are going to say it's a Republican, and then they'll overlook the fact that he's doing the same thing as Obama was doing, and they'll say, well, it's a Republican did it, so that's the best we could ever hope for. Well, it's not. We need the message of liberty pushed out so they'll hear it.
You know, what's crazy is that, neoconservatives, just normal Republicans, even Democrats, conservative Democrats, don't understand the word liberty. They don't understand what it actually means. And if they just reread the Constitution of the Declaration of Independence, it shows you that it's all about individual liberty. But the neocons and everybody has convinced everybody that it's all about this collectivist, that we got to take one for the team. And it's not what it's all about. And if people would really understand the founders, understand Jefferson or Benjamin Franklin, who said democracy is two wolves and a lamb voting on what's for lunch. Liberty is one well-armed lamb contesting the vote.
What's really amazing when you look at the track record of Ron Paul is that not only has he been consistent ideologically, right? I mean, even his critics would probably admit and begrudgingly that you could pick up a speech that Ron Paul gave in 1984, and it's not like he's going to be a raging socialist back then. He's going to be the Ron Paul we know back then, talking about issues and railing against government spending and so forth. So not only has he been consistent, but also if you read his commentary about things ranging from foreign policy to calling the housing bubble, I mean, he has been just eerily right in a lot of his predictions about if we go down this path, this is what's going to happen. And so, I mean, it amazes me that more people aren't just paying attention to him for that reason alone. Whether you like his views or not, I mean, he really ought to be listened to and just given attention because he's been so consistent and so accurate in predictions on many different topics.
Ross Perot in '92 predicted about North America Free Trade Agreement, that whoever would sign that law would, it would be like a giant sucking sound, and that would be all the jobs being sucked out of the United States. Another great prediction, came true. We see that now. Our manufacturing industry in the United States has been decimated. And so all these kids that are growing up, and even adults, there's no jobs to go to because of free trade agreements like that.
Yes, I'd like to direct my question to Mr. Perot. What will you do as president to open foreign markets to fair competition from American business and to stop unfair competition here at home from foreign countries so that we can bring jobs back to the United States?
That's right at the top of my agenda. We've shipped millions of jobs overseas, and we have a strange situation because we have a process in Washington where after you've served for a while, you cash in, become a foreign lobbyist, make $30,000 a month, then take a leave, work on presidential campaigns, make sure you got good contacts, and then go back out. Now, if you just want to get down to brass tacks, first thing you ought to do is get all these folks who've got these one-way trade agreements that we've negotiated over the years and say, fellas, we'll take the same deal we gave you. And they'll gridlock right at that point because, for example, we've got international competitors who simply could not unload their cars off the ships if they had to comply. You see, if it was a two-way street, just couldn't do it. We have got to stop sending jobs overseas. To those of you in the audience who are business people, pretty simple. If you're paying $12, $13, $14 an hour for factory workers, and you can move your factory south of the border, pay $1 an hour for labor, hire a young 25, that's assuming you've been in business for a long time, you've got a mature workforce. Pay $1 an hour for your labor, have no health care, that's the most expensive single element, making a car, have no environmental controls, no pollution controls, and no retirement, and you don't care about anything but making money, there will be a giant sucking sound going south. So if the people send me to Washington, the first thing I'll do is study that 2,000-page agreement and make sure it's a two-way street. One last point here. I decided I was dumb and didn't understand it, so I called the who's who of the folks who've been around it. And I said, why won't everybody go south? They said, we'll be disruptive. I said, for how long? I finally got them up for 12 to 15 years. And I said, well, how does it stop being disruptive? And that is when their jobs come up from $1 an hour to $6 an hour and ours go down to $6 an hour, then it's leveled again. But in the meantime, you've wrecked the country with these kinds of deals. We've got to cut it out.
We need people who are willing to change direction. You know, it's like there are times when you want bus drivers to drive the bus who will just continue to go on the current course when you've got a good course. When you've got a bad course, a bus driver who's just going to follow the rules and stay on the course is destructive. And, you know, we're at a point where I'm not even really as hostile to the Mitt Romneys and Obamas of the world as some other Ron Paul supporters are. I don't personally think that they're personally evil. I just think that right now they're the wrong choice and it's destructive. And we need somebody bold who will change direction even if it makes everybody mad, because we're in trouble and we can't lie to people anymore and say everything's going to be all right. And Obama and Romney are not. They're just going along to get along. They're just like everyone else. They're the status quo, and we need something new.
I think a true conservative is someone who believes in the principles of our founding fathers, and they want to conserve those principles, and they want to go back to those principles. They believe in Jeffersonian democracy. They believe in limited government, individual liberty, rule of law, following the rules. That's a big part of conservatism. Neoconservatives don't want to follow the rules. They want to skirt them and break them. They want to ignore the Constitution and tramp all over it in the name of national security. And it's a phony national security because the things they're doing don't make us safer, aren't necessary, and are only damaging our civil liberties. And if they want to do it, they should at least go by the rules if they're true conservatives and make sure that they're not violating the Constitution with laws like the Patriot Act, with the NDAA, with these sort of presidential executive orders and sending troops overseas without a congressional declaration of war. There's a way to do it. It's in the Constitution. If you're a conservative, you're all about following the rules. And that's why I think Ron Paul's a true conservative. He's about following the rules. I think someone like George W. Bush was not very conservative because he broke a lot of them.
You know, you see so much division. And I mean, this is why the Founding Fathers didn't want a two-party system, was because it's so divided between Democrats and Republicans. And it's all about, you know, who can win more ground, or, and it just becomes this battle of who's winning rather than who's doing the right thing. And that's why I love the liberty movement so much, because it unites both of those sides. I mean, either side can argue for liberty. And it's a very unifying thing rather than a dividing thing. And I think that's exactly what the country needs, is to have something that can unify us, like liberty, not things that can divide us and that we can just fight over and that never make a difference, or, you know, nothing ever changes, because it's just always that battle of whose team is winning rather than is our country going in the right direction.
One of the biggest takeaways from this movement that I think you'll see the longest term is that people are starting to learn the degree to which they can be involved more than just voting for president. You know, that they can start making educated votes on the city and state level. First of all, the state level is where the majority of the laws that day-to-day life are determined. So that it's, you know, knowing who your state representatives are, having a good relationship with them, making sure that you have some liberty-minded people in those offices, making sure that you're voting in your county caucus as to who the chairman of your Republican or Democratic party, whichever party you believe that is closest to your views, you should at least have a vote in it, so that even if you don't like the candidates, you've at least pushed it in a direction. You know, I think people are learning more about tactical voting, about, you know, even if your candidate loses, when you vote for your candidate, then at least people know what percentage of people agree with their ideas, so maybe the next politician will use that. It's different than the wasting of the vote idea, or the lesser of two evils voting strategy, which is the most worthless voting strategy. It's basically just piling on anyone who you think might win, which is, you know, you don't really win anything by having picked the person who won in politics if all the policies they advocate are bad for you. So I think that, you know, ultimately being involved on the local level and the state level is the biggest takeaway from this, because that's where the majority of the power needs to be held, and that's also where a lot of it gets taken away. And hopefully we'll see in the future that the liberty movement will be more active in party politics. That'll be, you know, maybe the Republican Party will eventually begin leaning more that direction en masse, and then we'll see, you know, more local and state politicians who are focused on making sure that our state constitutions are good and followed, and that our city charters are reasonable and followed, and that we have, you know, a rule of law on every level of government, and good public policy that respects human rights on every level. That's what the Ron Paul revolution is going to create in our lifetime. We want freedom in our lifetime. We're going to have to do it at every level.
Some people ask, well, you know, as the Ron Paul campaign winds down, and, you know, with his age, he's obviously not going to be running for president again, so on and so forth. He's been the standard bearer of the liberty message. You know, where does the campaign, or not, let's not even say the campaign, where does the movement, where does the liberty movement go from here? And I would argue that anybody who says they know is full of shit. Because I'm not a prophet. Ron Paul's probably the closest thing to a prophet that I've seen in my lifetime. It was so many years before the housing bubble bursted. He already knew that was going to happen. And he was talking about it. You know, it was one of the reasons that he gained the notoriety that he did, because he did see that coming before it happened. But where does it go when Ron Paul's gone? When the campaign is over? You know, do we just say, okay, now we quit? We're going to tolerate all the abuses that we see of our government on our rights? I say absolutely not. I don't know where the liberty movement is going next, but what I do know is that it's up to us. It's up to you, it's up to me, it's up to anybody else that makes a conscious decision. Do you want to carry this movement forward or not? If you don't, well, that's your personal choice. But if you do, then let's get busy.
Wake up, America! Our freedoms are at stake.